And welcome back to the Mountain Morning Show. From Running Wild, I'm so excited to have the director and producer, Suzanne Mitchell, and Steve Poltz, and he's music, the composer from the movie. And I'm so happy to have you guys here. Especially, I have to say, it's neat to have people that are so into the local environment here. You look at you with the Alta sweater on.
I was so excited when I heard I got to come up here after doing, after doing the soundtrack to this beautiful film and going to South Dakota, seeing all the beauty. When she said, how do you fancy coming to Park City, Utah? I went nuts.
How do you fancy it? I fancy it great, right?
Yes, sir, Joe Davis.
That's awesome. Well, tell me, do you have a favorite run over there?
Oh, my God.
I have to ask you that.
Anything that is super dangerous that I could have the possibility of breaking my hands on, I like. Anything double black diamond or harder.
We've got plenty of that over there, don't we? Oh, that's great.
No breaking hands in Park City.
We need you healthy for screenings. All right. Well, I am also excited about talking about this movie because it strikes a chord with Park City people. They're really big on conservation and taking care of the land and stewardship of that land. And that's what this movie really is all about.
Yeah, it's an inspiration to all of us, that each one of us, if you have a postage-size stamp, backyard, or if you have 12,000 acres like the main character in my movie, we're all Dayton Hyde, right, of the Black Hills Wild Horse Sanctuary. We all have a responsibility to save this planet. But it's very different than your typical environmental film, which is sort of, giving you statistics and global warming and all the rest. This is a story about a man who is a cowboy. And from the time that he was a young man at 13 to now almost 88.
Right.
His mission has been conservation. In a time and a period in our world where that word wasn't even part of our vernacular.
Yeah.
He was doing these things. From protecting coyotes, when most people were, dropping strychnine to get rid of them off of the ranches out west. Back in the 60s and 70s, he was protecting them because he felt the ecosystem has to work in balance.
It reminds me of Bonanza, in a way. And I'm going to do no one a favor to say this, but it's kind of funny to sing this quick clip from the. Did you know that Bonanza there was actually lyrics to that music?
No, I didn't know that.
Can you sing it?
Joe and Adam know every rock is mine. That's part of it. And I thought that kind of hits on what you're saying, that every part of that, every rock, is part of what we're protecting there.
And if you go out to the Black Hills Wild Horse Sanctuary, where this story, most of it has been shot, other parts of it were shot in Oregon and Michigan because we're telling his life story. But the base of it, the backdrop of this movie, was shot on this 12,000-acre wild horse sanctuary. So here's a man who was a cattle rancher his whole life, was a conservationist by hobby, by heart, not because he studied it in school.
Right.
He studied writing, actually. He's a prolific writer, and he believes that books can change people's minds.
I think it's interesting, though, because he's got a tiny little bit different take, I think, as a cowboy, and that is this, that it's still to be used and to be enjoyed. And that is one of the areas of conservation that sometimes kind of goes off on a different path than a lot of us would like, because, yeah, it's great to preserve it, but if you don't go out and enjoy it, if you don't go out and see those wild horses, what's the point? So that one-on-one connection is very important to him.
When he saw that the wild horses were being captured across America and being put in government feedlots by the Bureau of Land Management, he felt an obligation to save them. And when I say save them, I meant take them out of the confinement that they were in.
Yeah.
They were put in jail.
These to run.
Right. These are wild animals that were now in jail.
Yeah.
Right? So he said, I need a really large piece of land that could afford a lot of acreage for these horses to run on, and he found it. He found it in South Dakota, and literally on credit cards. At an age when most of us are considering retiring, between the ages of 62 and 65, he was setting up the sanctuary.
Wow.
Literally on credit cards and building fences by himself, and then convincing the government, along with Harry Reid, to take those horses out of the lots and set them free on this 12,000-acre sanctuary.
Well, we have a clip with this, and this, I believe, is Let Me Buy This Land, or something to that effect.
It's about saving the land.
So let's take a look at it right now. Wow. The guy, everything I've read about him is just a man who, has grown, like you said, really grown with this. And, when it's something it's like your home when you're a kid. If your parents sell it and you move, that's pretty rough, right? But it seems like he's so connected to that level to this place he loves.
And he's so dedicated to these horses that he's actually driven with his program director from the sanctuary all the way to Park City, Utah from South Dakota, and he's here
Really?
with us. And he was at the first screening on Saturday, and he'll be with us tomorrow at 7 p.m. And when you see him at his 6'5" stature, standing
Yeah.
up,
He's a
standing
big
up,
cowboy.
standing up for the West,
Yeah.
you say to yourself, "Wow, that's inspiration."
That's great. So the screening is tomorrow.
At 7 p.m.
7 p.m. And it's at
Treasure Mountain
Treasure
Inn,
Mountain.
Slam
Okay.
Dance.
Great. Guys, thank you so very much.
you.
I want to ask you one quick question because we need to talk about the music. When we're doing scapes like this, you know, giant pieces of tracts of land and things like that, you know, it kind of is reminiscent of you know, this land is your land. I mean, we have this evoking of emotion that comes from music and wild places and wild spaces. Tell me quickly about how that works into this film.
Well, I was so blown away when I met him. He's a big hulking figure of a man, almost like John Wayne or something. His hands are so big when you shake his hand. He was best friends with Slim Pickens, famous Slim
nice.
Pickens. He went bowling in the Army with Joe Louis, the brown bomber, the boxer.
So this is where you get some of your inspiration.
He's got a lifetime of stories, and I just sat, and I thought when I met him we'd go out to some big cowboy steakhouse, but we went to a Chinese buffet. He had me read his poems to him. He liked my voice, and he liked hearing his poems being read. And we bonded a bit together, and it made me just want to write songs. And it was a great move on Suzanne's part, flying me out there and letting me see the sanctuary and be around the horses, because when they ran by me, it was like an earthquake. I could hear the ground just rattling, and the horses just came galloping by, and then they stopped. He's a very spiritual man. They just stopped where he was, and they just looked at him. Powerful moment.
I bet. So that had to evoke the emotion where your music for this comes from, I imagine.
Oh, it did. I was blown away and inspired, and I'm so glad and honored that she asked me to be a part of the soundtrack and to do the soundtrack, because she got her nose on this scent about 20 years ago, and she didn't let it go. She heard me on WFUV out of New York one day, out of Fordham University, playing guitar in the morning, being interviewed, and she said, "That's the guy I want," and came after it.
That's great. Yeah,
That was
your
11 years
projects-
ago.
I was going to say, your
11 years
project
ago.
has had life from the very beginning.
21
That's
years,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you guys so very much. I
Thank
appreciate
you,
being
Joe
here.
Davis.
All right.
Thank you so much.
We'll be back with more on the Mountain Morning Show after these messages.